The absence of direct written sources about Castel del Monte has left large gaps in its history. Looking for these traces, the two scholars reinterpret the Voynich manuscript, immediately noticing a number of similarities to the castle.
Ci siamo imbattuti nel singolare manoscritto.
We came across the singular Voynich manuscript during some investigations on medicine at the time of Friedrich II, through the contributions of several foreign researchers who compared some miniated images of the manuscript to those of the medical code of Pietro da Eboli de Balnis Putiolanis. The poem was dedicated to and inspired by Friedrich II of Swabia, Sol Mundi, who had the opportunity to experience in person the virtues of the baths of Pozzuoli. Of the De Balnis Putiolanis, at least 22 copies from the 13th and 15th centuries are known of. At that time, the thermomineral cures were a natural solution to fighting almost every kind of pain. From some narratives, we know with certainty that Friedrich II used the baths of Pozzuoli in 1227. Body care and pharmacological science are very important for Friedrich II. This is demonstrated by the development given to the Salerno Medical School, a true bastion of the medical culture of the time. The tradition of the Salerno Medical School dates back to Roman times. In 1046, the arrival of Constantine the African brought to Salerno Arabic medical knowledge, later integrated with Byzantine knowledge. Friedrich II reorganizes the school so that you cannot practice the medical profession without following the expected years of study and being examined by a cart. The pharmaceutical and medical professions then became independent. The Voynich manuscript is an ancient illuminated manuscript. The only specimen is currently housed in the Beinecke Rare Book Library at Yale University in the United States. Written in an unknown code that has never been cracked, or in a language whose characters have not been found in any other document of the time, the content and correct dating of the manuscript remain a mystery. The text, however, appears to be composed of words and is arranged in short paragraphs. Radiocarbon dating tests carried out on the vellum and ink date it to the early 15th century, but the manuscript, rediscovered in 1912 by the antiquarian Wilfrid Voynich in the Villa Mondragone, Frascati, contained a letter stuck to the back cover dated August 19, 1665, in which Marcus Marci, rector of University of Prague, attributed the work to Roger Bacon, Dr. Mirabilis, the most famous scientist, physician and alchemist of the age of Friedrich II. Bacon was probably in contact with Swabian court through the astrologer Michele Scoto.
Probabilmente in contatto con la corte sveva tramite la figura dell'astrologo Michele Scoto.
That Friedrich II was attracted by philosophy and science is evident from the conversation he had with the multitude of scientists, philosophers and necromancers belonging to different cultures who crowded his court. The lively interest in mathematics, astrology and astronomy was supported by a rational, empirical but also superstitious spirit. The questions addressed by the emperor to Michele Scoto, a philosopher and court astrologer since 1227, on the origins of the heart and the stars and on the existence of an otherworldly world are known. Federico was fascinated by the philosophy of the school of Averroes, an Arab mathematician and philosopher. Many of the questions, called Sicilian questions, were directed to Islamic scientists and philosophers after the death of Scoto between 1237 and 1242. They constitute a very important element for understanding the emperor's attitude towards the Islamic world.
Importantissimo per comprendere l'atteggiamento dell'imperatore nei riguardi del mondo islamico.
The book is organized as a manual divided into 4 sections. The first, Botany, contains 113 drawings of plants apparently unknown, and the second, Astronomical and Astrological or Cosmological, presents 25 charts of possible studies about constellations. The third, biological, is characterized by the repeated presence of nude female figures, often submerged in tanks filled with water. The last section, pharmacology, seems to be a veritable treatise on the science of alchemy. There is then a final section where images do not appear, which is conceivably a kind of index.
Se si osserva attentamente il
If
manoscritto,
you look closely at the manuscript, many of the plants in the illustrations are comparable to real-life plants, many of which are found in Italy, and especially in Apulia.
in particolar modo in Puglia.
The manuscript is certainly encrypted and therefore still considered unreadable, but at the beginning of each phrase a sign similar to an F, visibly comparable to the monogram with which Frederick II signed his documents, appears. In addition, the images of the biological section are clearly related to drawings taken from the Balnis Putiolanis by Pietro da Eboli, probably dedicated to Frederick II in 1212, 37 epigrams in Latin couplets, comprising a list of all the natural springs in the Pozzuoli Bay area, listing them by name and by the therapeutic qualities of the water. There are also similarities to De Retardazione Accidentium Senectutis, also dedicated to Frederick, attributed to Roger Bacon.
Inoltre lo stile dei disegni di
In addition, the style of the drawings and the positioning of the writing around them, especially with regard to the herbal and pharmaceutical section, are comparable to medieval herbaria, common in the 12th and 13th centuries, and very similar to those that Frederick collected and handed down to the school of Salerno. Alchemical medicine is directly related to the biological section, with schematic drawings of equipment and instruments, the albarelli, decorated glass or ceramic containers used by medieval chemists, pharmacists and herbalists. But the most important part of the manuscript is the astronomical section, which contains a non-standard size paper. On the back of this special page, in a central position, is an illustration of a floor plan of a building, a central plan with towers and perimeter card consistent with the hypothetical conceptual plan of Castel del Monte. Page 852 contains a diagram of a pseudo-circular structure at the center of which there is a sun, surrounded by rays and enclosed in a space of intense blue with a series of waves of water comparable to those of a bath, forming a vortex that rotates counterclockwise like the real rivulets of water that surrounded the castle, a vortex of ring structure framed by pseudo-circular walls that are identical to those of Castel del Monte.
La somiglianza iconografica.
The similarity of the iconography of the Voynich manuscript with the Balnis Putiolanis allows us to read this page easily, as the sun and the moon prevail over all the stars, so the source of the sun and its properties are superior to all other beneficial sources. Peter of Eboli, in fact, called Balneum Sol et Luna the emperor's bath. Suddenly, all the human figures in the manuscript knee-deep in the water became a clear reference to the same water system hidden in the walls of Castel del Monte. Even the reference to the albarelli becomes a sign of comparison. On one of the benches in Castel del Monte, a trace left by corrosive substances suggests the presence of one of these alchemical containers full of highly corrosive fluids. Each sector outside the ring between the four channels of water has a human figure protruding from it at the four cardinal points. The figure on the east holds a dark object, a globe surmounted by something that looks like a peak or a cross, while the figure in the west holds a flower, shaped like a lily with 3 petals. The page contains 4 human figures placed on the cardinal points of the building, 2 of which opposite each other, carrying in his right hand 2 symbols, the lily and the orb. The lily with 3 petals is unequivocally linked to the figure of Frederick II, and we find it in numerous portraits of the emperor and in several examples of Frederican architecture. The orb, a sphere with a cross on top, is a Christian symbol used during the Middle Ages on coins, iconography and royal regalia. It represents the dominion of Christ over the world. For Christians, the presence of the orb and the imperial insignia signified the fact that the emperor ruled the world by divine will. Immediately after the astrological section, the cosmological section with the page of the rosette appears, where 9 circles are arranged as 8 radials and 1 in the middle, just like the 8 octagonal towers of Castel del Monte. The knowledge of the motion of the stars was preparatory to the proper use of the waters for bathing described in the next section, the biological section. Castel del Monte was not merely a defensive castle, as its perfect alignment to the cardinal points proves unequivocally. The octagonal shape, the result of 45-degree rotation of 2 squares, has always suggested the metaphysical connection between heaven and earth, or rather between the finite of the earthly Jerusalem and the infinity of the universe dome. Research into the origin of the Voynich manuscript is still ongoing. In 2009, radiocarbon dating identified the origin of the manuscript to around the beginning of the 15th century. Microscopic analysis, however, has found the absence of scratches, blots or cancellations, something unusual for a manuscript of that period, suggesting it had been copied. If the dating proves to be reliable, along with the letter from Marcus Marci, the 2 sources do not necessarily conflict. The Voynich manuscript could in fact be a 15th century copy of an older original work by Bacon, or one of his contemporaries, and this would explain the undecipherable nature of the text. As a copy, the amanuensis may well have miscopied the glyphs, unaware that the encrypted text hid the contents from the papacy, hiding the secrets of the science of alchemy it contained, now forever lost in the mists of history. The mystery surrounding the Voynich manuscript extends far beyond the cryptographic challenge posed to the best minds of recent times. The most accredited surveys of today analyze the Voynich manuscript following a statistical approach and the search for linguistic structures within the text. In particular, they show that the text has the same properties as natural language. Starting from the statistics of frequencies of words, it is shown that these have qualitative and quantitative characteristics close to those of a real language, clearly indicating the presence of a non-trivial linguistic structure in the Voynich manuscript. For us, it becomes natural in the manuscript of Voynich to understand if the sequence of symbols and words written in an unknown alphabet is a nonsense sequence or generated with a simple algorithm or even with a complex algorithm, or if it is a language or if it contains structured information. We think that it's close to a natural language in some ways. For some others, it is very distant from a natural language and probably similar to an artificial language. The manuscript has no punctuation and there's no errors or corrections, probably a mechanical recopilation made by people who were unfamiliar with this alphabet and this language. I admit that for a long time I thought it was a scam, and I admit that I changed my mind. We have indications that correlate with one another from researchers who made us think today that in the text of Voynich
ad oggi sostenere che nello scritto del testo di Voynich, c'è un'informazione.
1. There is structured information. 2. There are elements that act as a language. 3. It couldn't have been written with an algorithm, a grid of Cardanus or an abacus. The words inside it have a statistical return that is certainly anomalous and different from the statistics they would have if it were an artificial or aleatory text.
Quella che avrebbero se fosse un testo generato in maniera artificiale o aleatoria. Perché se Voynich fosse veramente una truffa, probabilmente...
If Voynich was really a scammer, you probably couldn't find any correlation between the words statistically. So there are words in the Voynich which show that there is information in its content. It's not just a forgery, it's not just a scam. My opinion is that in the text, still unknown, there is a rational content. Thank you.
Che nel testo ci sia un contenuto informativo. Vi ringrazio.
Ad oggi è difficile.
Today, it is difficult to conclusively say which hypotheses can be discarded and which are to be considered as reliable. The figure of Frederick II leaves room for varying interpretations. A fine thinker, supreme jurist, a man of great determination and pragmatism. His rivalry with the papacy consumed his reign until the final unhappy outcome. But the science, bequests, strategies, tactics and plans by which the Church attempted to veto every branch of knowledge have left an indelible mark in the south of Italy. If the highest virtues of honesty, intelligence, wisdom, a good reputation and nobility of blood could withstand death, Frederick, who rests here, would not die.